Welcome to Innovation in Design Thinking Introduction. During the next 40 minutes, we're going to be taking a look at how you might go about creating an effective innovation framework for your organization and how to use design thinking as a method to enable that innovation framework to deliver a truly robust culture of innovation in your organization. My name is Tor Schuler. I am with Avanade. I am the innovation lead for the Southwest region, and I'm a senior director in our innovation organization. I'm also leading our Houston-based innovation center and experience center. And when I have some spare time, I mostly work on AI, IoT, and certainly also delivering design thinking sessions internally as well as to our clients. But enough of that. Let's talk about innovation. What makes innovation successful in an organization? And I want to kind of look at desirability, viability, and feasibility as the key drivers to innovation. So let's take a look at how that might look like. Innovation, in the end, is about finding new ways to address challenges and issues that our stakeholders face in their everyday life. But how do we know what our stakeholders really want? How do we know what they really need to be successful? Well, one way to look at this is to look at the ingredients of innovation as desirability, viability, and feasibility. Let's talk about each of those in a little bit of detail. I'm going to start with this blue circle here, which is the feasibility, the technical aspects. Feasibility as in, can it be done? If you have an idea, if you want to do something new, can we actually do it? Is it physically possible? So feasibility deals with all the technical. It's something that generally we are very, very comfortable with. It is not super hard from an engineering perspective, to figure out if something is doable or not, right? So generally, this is an area that we're very, very comfortable with. It's a very deterministic area that we can work in. We can figure this out fairly quickly. Viability, up here, deals with the business aspect. Not can it be done, but actually does it make sense to do it from an economic perspective? For example, it might be fun and feasible to use a robot dog to fetch the newspaper. Is it viable? Probably not. So where viability and feasibility meet, this little slice here, that's the area of implementation. That's where IT generally plays. You know, platform implementation, rolling out teams to the organization, bringing SharePoint online, deploying SAP. Those are all things that create transformation that are both feasible and viable and lead to implementation projects, but they hardly ever create transformational results in our business. They are not really innovation. In order to truly look at the innovative sphere, there's a key component that we need to bring in, and that is desirability, the human element, the perspective of our users and our stakeholders. And desirability, unlike feasibility and viability, is this squishy concept. It's not easy, it's not deterministic. It is very, very subjective. What is desirable for one person might not be desirable for another. It's very, very hard to assess. But if you can, in fact, get a handle on the desirability, you can then find the sweet spot where feasibility, viability, and desirability meet. And that is where true innovation, that's where true disruption is happening. So how do we go about assessing desirability? How do we understand what our stakeholders really want? Not necessarily what they're telling us they want, but the underlying emotion, the underlying driver of what it really is. Well, there's this concept of empathy, which is really, really big in terms of determining desirability. And empathy is not something that we are, as business people in the business environment, tremendously comfortable with. But it's something that we have to become comfortable with if we truly want to take a look at human-centered innovation. Innovation that creates positive outcomes for people, which is ultimately what we're all about. So in order to assess viability, I have a little video that I want to show you. It's from Brené Brown. So let's take a look.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
I want to introduce this concept. Creativity and innovation are the results of imagination bounded by appropriateness. What does that mean? If you think about imagination, kids are very, very innovative. They can think of the greatest things. Now, can these things actually be done? Maybe, maybe not. They don't care though, right? It's unbounded imagination. It's divergent. Imagination is a very divergent process. It's the creation of choices. Many, many choices. How could I go about accomplishing whatever? I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could that. Doesn't matter whether I can actually do it, but this might be a way to approach it. And kids have this wonderful ability to totally discount appropriateness. They have no concept yet of appropriateness, of money, of budgets, of technical limitations. They just have ideas, and it's awesome. But imagination by itself does not lead to innovation. Because in order to be innovation, it actually has to be able to be executed. And that is where convergence comes in. Making choices. What is possible, given the budget constraints we might be having, given the technical constraints that we might be having. So innovation happens when we have imagination bounded by appropriateness. And we are very good as grown-ups with respect to appropriateness, with respect to convergence onto a viable solution. And here's that concept again of viability and feasibility are convergent concepts, whereas desirability is on the imagination space. It's a divergent concept. And so you see this diamond here that we're having. The divergent arc of the diamond, where we kind of look at all of the possibilities. We look broadly. And then the closing part of the diamond, the convergent process, where you make choices, narrow down towards the most appropriate solution for our challenge. So I want you to keep that diamond here in mind, because we're gonna come back to this at a moment. So with this, I'm gonna now change tracks a bit and focus on design thinking as an enabler of the innovative process in an organization. We talked about desirability earlier. We talked about empathy, understanding, connecting with our stakeholders. I want to start to talk about design thinking with a quote by Steve Jobs. You might still know him from Apple. Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Most people cannot do think when we talk about design is look and feel. And there's some of that. But really, it's also how it works. How a user gets to experience the function of the product. Not just the look and feel, the function. In architecture, that might be the functionality of a room, a layout of the kitchen, the ability to have an open floor plan. That is design. In IT, it might be, how easy can I hold this phone in my hand? Not just does it look good, but also does it fit comfortably in my palm? Can I actually use it easily? How does it work? Let's talk about exactly what design thinking is. Design thinking is user-centric. It puts the user always in the center of our development efforts. Take this bridge, for example. This bridge is in Birmingham, UK. And generally, when I do this interactively, I ask people in the room, kind of to look at this contraption in the middle and what that is. And obviously, people generally recognize that this is done to prevent people on bicycles to kind of shoot through that straight bridge at a high speed. And on first sight, it does do that job, right? I mean, you cannot just shoot through here with your bicycle. You have to kind of get off. You have to kind of go around. But the other thing that obviously does, and I kind of always ask this question as well in my interactive sessions, what else does this do? Well, if you are a parent with a stroller, it's hard to get through here with a stroller. If you're handicapped in a wheelchair, again, very hard to get through and navigate this. So while the designer of this contraption here has certainly taken a user-centric perspective, they have looked very narrowly at one segment of users and not at all users. What they have done is they have disadvantaged a number of users to create or to obtain their objective. And the takeaway is that those folks that did this spent a lot of time designing this contraption, designing this bridge, but they did not spend enough time thinking about all of the people who'd be crossing it, who'd be using it. And when we talk about design thinking, it's spending that time about the people who will use our products and for whom we are innovating to make sure that what it is that we're doing affects them in a way that leads to a positive experience. So as such, design thinking is the collision of human-centered design and creative problem solving. Human-centered design as in developing for the people who use the product, services, and processes that we're creating, and creative problem solving as in the transformative way that your organization develops products, services, processes. That is that collision that we're looking for, that we're bringing together to create a design thinking strategy. There are a couple of tenets when we talk about design thinking that we'd like to point out. Design thinking is human-centered. We grant everything we do in the human needs and feedbacks through engaging and empathizing with the people that we're impacting. It's collaborative. If you truly want to be successful as an innovation organization, cross-functional teams, diverse teams are key to represent different perspectives of the various stakeholders. It's perfectly fine to bring in those people with the ideas, the thinking big. Those are the folks that bring imagination. but also bring in the people who are critical, who are the designers, the thinkers, the solvers, because they are going to bring that convergence, the appropriateness, and you need both. And cross-functional teams allow you to have different viewpoints presented on your product development team. Design thinking is creative, but it's not a free-for-all. It is structured. There are rules, there are methods, there are templates, and we're going to actually, later in our panel, look at some of those and how we can facilitate that structured approach very effectively. When we do design thinking, we are prototype driven. We use visual representations of our ideas and solutions that can be tested very quickly, that can be taken to our stakeholders, demonstrated without much investment to validate that what we are thinking about, what we're trying to accomplish, what we're proposing truly resonates with our intended audience. And last but not least, it's iterative. We always test our ideas and prototypes with the users and stakeholders to validate them throughout the process. Understand their feedback and then redesign based on that feedback to create a better solution. And that iteration creates truly effective, truly innovative, and truly usable products. My last slide in this little introduction is to introduce you to the double diamond of innovation. Double diamond of innovation is a tool that I use in my design thinking workshops a lot. To create transformational change, it basically embraces this idea of divergence and convergence, of thinking big before making choices. When we have somebody come in to us with interest, expressing interest in doing something, it is very easy to jump immediately through to exploring solutions. How could we do this? A person comes to you and says, I need a SharePoint site. You say, yeah, okay, yeah, let's go, let's make it happen. Instead of asking, why do you need a SharePoint site? What is it that you want to achieve? What is it that you want to accommodate, create? What outcome do you want to create, right? And in asking these questions, in gaining insight, we're diverging out, we're thinking big, we're kind of, branching out a little bit. We're trying to understand what it is, what outcome it is that our users are after. And so we might find that instead of creating a SharePoint site, what they're really interested in perhaps is connecting with their co-workers, across the globe, or better communicating on a project or whatever it might be. But now we moved away from a solution towards an outcome. As we kind of gain this insight, we might identify multiple possible outcomes. And now we can bring in the appropriateness, the convergence. We're kind of converging down to identify the key outcomes that we need to address for our user to be happy and successful. There's a convergence. So you remember our diamond from earlier? There's one of those diamonds, right? And this is the problem space, the problem domain. Gaining insight, defining the true problem that we're trying to solve. Creating and defining the measurable outcomes that we need to generate in order to be successful. And then we diverge out again. We explore solutions. We look at the different ways that it might be possible to generate these outcomes. And those different ways might include technology, they might include culture, they might include processes, they might include other things. It is not just one dimension that we want to look at. We want to look at all of those dimensions. And again, we will have a plethora of possible approaches. And again, we bring in appropriateness. Might it be feasibility, might it be viability, to decide, make choices towards the solutions that we're actually implementing to create the desired impact. And this being an iterative process, we go through this very quickly on the prototyping level. Then we iterate. We bring it back to the user. We gain insight again. We identify problems with our solution. We iterate on measurable outcomes, re-explore, rapidly validate towards impact. And this iteration goes on over and over and over again until we are arriving at the state where we think that our outcomes are achieved and our users are satisfied. So with this, I'm going to kind of close out here with respect to this little introduction to innovation and design thinking. I hope this has provided value to you. If you have any questions, obviously reach out to me. And we will be, in a moment, switching over to the panel, where we will actually demonstrate some of these approaches on a real problem and kind of walk through how design thinking can be applied to actually achieve those type of outcomes. With that, thank you very much, and reach out if you have any comments, any questions, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.